I think we all know that being a caregiver is tough. It's not easy. It's a tough job.
It can be very challenging and really just wear you out. So today we are going to bring to you Amy Wright. She has a company, Amy Wright and Company. She is a aging and end of life educator and advocate with a background in hospice. So you've done a lot in this work. Talk a little bit about, we hear the term compassion fatigue, and I know we're exhausted, especially if you're doing hands-on care of your loved one. But talk a little bit about what that really means.
Sure. Well, I think we all can relate to the fatigued part, but if you wondered if this topic was for you and did a quick Google would tell you that it's indifference to charitable appeals on behalf of those who are suffering. Well, that's a little jargony for me.
Right.
I prefer a definition by a licensed clinical social worker who started talking about this and experiencing it and researching it when he was doing some crisis counseling in an inner city emergency room. His name's Carl LaRoe, and he sums it up as a debilitating weariness. That just sounds as heavy. Yes. And it's essentially absorbing the heartache and the suffering of the people around us, and whether we feel or we actually are responsible for providing relief of that. And I think it's so relatable to the folks in your group and our greater community, because it's a relatable experience. That's whether it's a result of being ill-equipped or ill-prepared for the challenges that come with caregiving, or simply how long we've been at it with no end in sight.
Yeah. Well, and I think, don't you think too, that especially since it's your parent or a loved one, there's just so much emotion involved, because it's so hard to watch somebody that you care so much about having a tough time.
Yeah, the investment for sure.
And how do you know if you are suffering from compassion fatigue?
Well, you've got really good odds if you're a woman. I want to give you, no offense, Mike. I want to lay it out for you, kind of some data around it. I think that it's easier to quantify some of these things if you're a numbers person in particular. So before and during the pandemic, family caregiving responsibilities mostly fell to women. It's about a 60-40 split. 1 in 10 women said they were taking care of someone in their family prior to the pandemic, and an additional 1 in 10 have said they've got new caregiving responsibilities that occurred during the pandemic. On average, a caregiver is 49 years old, providing 20 hours of unpaid care a week. So while it's 60-40 in the gender split, the disparity is a little bit greater when we're talking about the unpaid care. So women are providing those 20 hours, which comes out to 62%, and men are providing about 38%. These working daughters are employed. They're of the sandwich generation, meaning that while they're taking care of potentially an older parent, they're also taking care of children still in the home. So they're trying to do that, do all of their take care of their parents.
You're running carpool for your kids and taking mom to her doctor's appointment.
Yep. While taking care of ourselves. And I know for myself, I'm the first thing that falls off of my to-do list. 26% are parents of a minor, 50% support an adult child. So if you look at the fact that we're providing those 20 hours of unpaid care on top of 50% of us providing care for an adult child, we're stretched pretty thin. So the framework for this is already laid. BIPOC women in particular, Black, Indigenous, people of color, they are twice as likely as white women to have a high school education or less. And minority women typically face greater challenges accessing paid resources to caregiving. So the deck is stacked against us in this regard.
And what are those signs? What are those signs that, how do we know I'm suffering from compassion fatigue?
Yeah. Okay. So, with my background in hospice, I love hospice so much because it's holistic. Some people hear holistic and they think like crystals and feathers. It's not that. It means that hospice treats a whole person. So we're looking at the physical signs and symptoms of our patients, emotional, spiritual, the whole enchilada. And so in that regard, we have to look at our signs and symptoms of compassion fatigue, through that lens. We have signs and symptoms from all of those perspectives. Physically, you might be experiencing a more rapid pulse, or insomnia, inability to sleep. On the flip side, maybe you're fatigued and find yourself sleeping all the time. You could become immunocompromised, a weakened immune system just from the feeling that you're dragging. Memory problems, when you're trying to remember doctor's appointments and all the information that gets downloaded at those appointments, while also keeping the ballet schedule and who's got to be at practice when, and the big work projects, and oh my gosh, remembering to get groceries. You can imagine why.
Right.
There's only so much capacity. And then weight changes. Some people from the stress stop eating, they lose weight. Some people gain it. I eat my feelings, so that's relatable for me. And then GI issues, whether to call a spade, whether we're from the stress, we become constipated, or the anxiety, we just have diarrhea all the time.
I think a lot of times people don't see it in themselves. So I think maybe it's good for people to look at your loved ones, your friends, and see that, oh my gosh, you're spending so much time taking care of your loved one that you're forgetting about yourself. And
calling that out.
Yeah. And the fatigue is really setting in, and you got to help somebody in that respect.
Yeah, I think that culturally it's more normative for us to embrace toxic positivity, where it's that like good vibes only culture. And that's why I think your group in particular is so supportive. It's such a resource because it's a safe place for people to say, I am struggling. Or I got that, mom got this new diagnosis, dad's advancing in his diagnosis, and as his disease progresses, there's new stuff to handle. And I don't even know the next right question to ask to be able to get it resolved.
Well, one of the things that I think that oftentimes as an adult daughter, helping with my mom, or sometimes I think, okay, am I just not doing something right? Or is it, is there something that's causing me to be so stressed about this? And I think that talk a little bit about that, because I think that it's easy for us to think that we're not doing enough, or maybe if I just did this, it would be better. And that may or may not be the case, right?
It's so not the case. And I'm so glad you brought that up. I think, intrinsically, so many of us have the instinct to do more, better, faster. If we just hustle, we can muscle right through it. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but here we are. And I think that we have to reinforce for one another. It is not an inadequacy. It's not a failure or a shortcoming that we're having. I hear these same feelings kind of universally of people having this experience, the overwhelm, maybe it's like I was mentioning, that lack of education, where you don't know what to do next or how to prioritize things, feeling inadequate. And maybe there is a very literal inadequacy. We only have so many hours in a day. We only have so much money, because even with preparing, for caring for an adult parent, caregiving is expensive. We only have so much energy, so much patience, and we find ourselves being snippy with our partners or our kids or, our coworkers or the person that we're providing care for. And then we feel guilty. We feel guilty that we, for the ways that we are or are not handling all of that stress and those other feelings. And it's just not the case. Caregiving is tough, like you've said, and it's got some tough feelings that come with it.
Yeah. And it's not always the children. I know watching my mom and dad, as my dad was taking care of my mom with her Alzheimer's 24/7, it was really wearing on him. Talking about fatigue, we could see that in him. That's why my sister and I were so worried, not only about her, but also about him, and trying to make both of their lives better.
Yeah. And especially in hospice, I saw that a lot, where a spouse was having to make that ultimate decision, whether to elect their hospice benefits for their partner, and then not understanding that hospice wasn't 24/7. If someone becomes bedbound, it's really hard to expect an adult, an older spouse, late 80s, early 90s, be responsible for all of the physical responsibilities of caregiving. So yeah, totally.
Well, I think especially with your dad, once your mom moved to memory care, your dad just, really kind of recovered, if you will, a little bit about just, kind of being a little bit more back to his old self. He had more energy. Of course, he also needed a pacemaker, which that could have caused some challenges too. So there's that. But I think that we did see that it was wearing so much on him, and there was such a huge difference just physically.
Yeah, the fatigue. I
The
mean, that's just
fatigue,
a great description, because there was so much fatigue there.
And I think it's important to normalize that relief too. I think that's another thing that we feel guilty for, whether it's, you know, when we're struggling and we do say, okay, I'm going to accept some respite hours, you know, somebody else to come in so I can tap out for a minute.
Yeah.
Or, you know, we decide ultimately I need to pay for caregivers overnight because I'm not getting any sleep, or we need to make a placement change. You know, maybe mom can't stay in her own home anymore and needs to go to long-term care or something. And then, or even ultimately when you've been caring for somebody for so long and they pass, the feeling of, I love them, I miss them, all of the things that come with grief, but also that relief. It's okay to feel that way. You know, it's okay to allow yourself to come up for air.
So it sounds like the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that people understand that compassion fatigue is a real thing. And so it's so important to acknowledge that in yourself, and to realize that, hey, this might be what's happening, or how this is why I'm feeling this way. And then figuring out some ways, like you just mentioned, the respite care, or do we need to bring in care, ways to get help so that you can get some relief, because, you know, we're not going to be good caregivers if we're not taking care of ourselves either.
And one of the benefits of the series that you're doing for our community is providing the education. You know, that's the what my company is about as well. But we can't know what we don't know. There's no way to be responsible for that. And so without having the conversation more pervasively, normalizing the feelings, and then connecting people with resources, there's really no way to get relief, to resolve all of this stuff.
Well,
compassion fatigue is real.
It is very real. Yeah. Amy, thank you so much for all that you've shared with us.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for everything you're doing for our community.
Thank you. Yeah. So good. The first thing to know is that it is a real thing, and there are a lot of people suffering, and it's not just, you know, it's not just something that we're not doing right.
Yes. Yeah. And get help if you need it. Please get help. If you have any other topics you'd like us to touch on and talk to an expert about, let us know here on Parenting Aging Parents.